Isn't that beautiful? It's from the brand new album by Katherine Jenkins, who joins us in the studio today. You're one of my favourite people. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Lucky me.
You've got everything, haven't you? You've got the amazing voice, you're gorgeous, you're talented, it's so effortless. It must be fantastic to be you right now.
I do feel very lucky and very blessed, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm just so grateful because it's everyone else that's, supporting me that's making it happen. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it.
How do you cope with being you, that everybody wants you, you're wanted on every TV show, they want to talk to you, they want you to sing, your albums fly off the shelves. How do you cope with that psychologically?
Well, I think it's keep my family close, really, because my mum and everyone back home, they're all very down to earth, very grounded, and they, I think, keep everything real. So I don't really have any friends that weren't friends from before I was famous. Everyone's got my best interests at heart, so I think that's important, not to get carried away and start believing in your own hype.
I've seen you for the last 2 years touring across the UK, and what is interesting about your show is you have 12-year-old girls who love you, you have 40-year-old ladies who think you're amazing, and then you have 80-year-old guys who also love you. It is completely across the board, isn't it?
Yes, and it's been getting more like that over the last few years. Originally I would say it was an older market, but definitely, especially with the Viva La Diva and being on tour with Darcy Bussell, I'm seeing younger and younger people coming in, and that makes me so happy, because when I talk to them after the show and they're saying, when I grow up I want to be an opera singer rather than a pop star, which maybe it was 10 years ago. It's just so exciting, I think, especially for classical music.
And what you've done with your albums, and there are other people as well, Russell Watson's helped, and people like Andrea Bocelli, is bring classical music into normal people's houses. And I mean that with the greatest respect. It's a clever thing you've done, that you've made it accessible, although we don't even know you're doing it.
Well, I grew up in a normal, house, working class background. My parents didn't play classical music. And just because of my love of singing, I joined the church choir, and they started training my voice for that type of music. And so my singing teacher suggested classical music, and it wasn't a decision made on my part, but I did fall in love with classical music. So I always feel quite upset when people think it's an elitist thing, when I think everybody out on the street, they know a lot about classical music. They might not know who wrote it, what opera it's from, things like that, but these are the pop songs of their time. So it's good to see more people tuning into it.
And for you, when I watch you perform, it seems so effortless. I know this is the stupidest question I'm going to ask in the interview, but you must have been born singing. You can't be trained to do what you do, can you really?
I think there's a certain amount of training. I did have to go to the Royal Academy for 4 years to learn to be able to sing in these different languages and things like that. But I have always wanted to sing, and I did my first performance when I was 4. So I remember there was a talent show at school, and I begged my mum to teach me a song so I could be part of it. And I didn't question whether I had a good voice. It was just that that's all I wanted to do. So I guess you are kind of born with a passion.
I hear a lot of things about, you don't become a great singer until you're 40 with the type of songs that you sing. Do you find every album sounds better to your ear?
My voice is definitely developing. I made the first album when I was 22, 23, so there's obviously a big difference between that and I'm 28. So yeah, with each album, because there's usually a gap of a year in between, I can hear it maturing, I can hear progression. But it is true that your voice isn't totally developed until you're 30, so there is something in that.
So they're not lying?
No. But I'm still training, and I would imagine that for the rest of my life I'll keep having singing lessons, which I think is another thing people can't understand. But you're always learning as a singer. You can always pick up new techniques and little things that help you.
What fascinates me as well about your albums is you sound like you're from the places that you're singing in, if you know what I mean. How do you get that right? Because it could very easily sound a parody, couldn't it?
Well, I spent a lot of time working on the languages when I was studying, and it's very important that not only do you know roughly the translation, but you know what each word is when you're singing in German or French or whatever it is, because you can't sing a sad song, with a big smile on your face. You have to be able to interpret the emotion. And the language coaches at the Academy are amazing. So, and whenever I have to learn a new song now in another language, I still go back to them, still make sure that the pronunciation's right, because I think it would be a huge mistake. And I don't know, it would be just very, very wrong to sing it without the correct pronunciation.
What comes first then? The words, the meaning of the words, the tune? How do you learn a song?
The meaning of the words, the pronunciation, without any music, and then the music, and then the pronunciation with the music, and then the interpretation.
Right, and what does that mean then? What's interpretation?
the performance, so how you can colour the song, how you can get the message across, and how you can make it different to other versions.
Because that's the difficult thing. What I noticed with many of the people who have brought out albums in the last few years, the same songs keep coming around and around again and again, but they do all sound different. You don't want anybody saying, well, she doesn't do as well as Sarah Brightman, or she doesn't do it as well as someone else. That's not what you need, is it?
Well, you can't please everyone all of the time, and there are going to be people who prefer a different version. I've always tried to take songs and give them my own treatment. I've sung a lot of men's songs, so I've sung things like Nessun Dorma and O Sole Mio, because they have been heard so many times, so I thought it was nice to give it a new twist. But even with Abide With Me on the album, we decided to have a key change, had a really kind of, it's quite a huge arrangement done, so I guess whatever it is that fits into the album, but yeah, you want it to be your own version.
Let's take another track from the album. Lord Is My Shepherd is one of those that everybody knows, really. They just can't sing it as well as you.
Well, it's the theme tune to The Vicar of Dibley, this one, which is the first thing that everyone says when they hear it. It was so easy to make this album because I learned to sing in church. I was there 10 years before I left to go to the academy. And with this being my 6th album, I thought it was quite nice to kind of go full circle, go back to the beginning, and make an album of all the things that inspired me to sing in the first place. So it's the obvious album for me to make. So that had to be on there.
We're back on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield talking to the brilliant Katherine Jenkins, who has got this new album out called Sacred Arias. You talk about your work in the church when you were a child. Were you religious then, or were you spiritual, or were you just there for the singing?
No, we're quite religious as a family. My mum teaches, or not anymore, but used to at the time teach Sunday school, and my family used to attend together. So when I joined at 7, I'd grown up in the church, so that wasn't a massive change. And I would say that I am a spiritual person, very much so. I've had moments where I've lost my faith a bit when my father died when I was a teenager, but it's getting stronger as I get older. So it's good I think when you're travelling and you're stressed and you're away from your family, it's really important to have your faith.
And tell me about those days in the church when you'd be sat there on a pew singing along like that with Abide With Me or with The Lord Is My Shepherd, and suddenly that voice comes from the crowd. I mean, were people noticing in those days that there was something quite odd about you?
Yeah, I suppose. There were a lot of other girls in the choir who wanted to sing, and we all entered competitions like Choir Girl of the Year, and I was very lucky to win. And that was my first achievement in singing. And I think I was always encouraged, which I'm so grateful for, from the church. Always encouraged to enter things and to do all my Royal School of Church Music exams and things like that. So I don't think I'd be here without my time in the church. I think it was an amazing experience for me.
Let's go back to your childhood. You mentioned your mother and father, who you loved dearly and still do. How encouraging were them of you and your singing? Because they must have known so early on that you'd got something. It might not be the voice you've got today, but it must have been extraordinary.
My mum and dad were always very supportive. They didn't have much money, but whatever they had was sort of put towards singing lessons and piano lessons and things like that. And my dad was the house husband, so he used to drive me round whilst my mum was still at work to, back and forth to lessons. So they were quietly supportive, but at the same time, always wanted me to have a backup plan. So very realistic. There's a lot of people that want to, be a singer. I don't know what the chances are, but you better have a real job ready, a backup plan, which is why I got my teacher's diploma. And even now my mum jokes and says I haven't got a real job.
In those days in Wales, did you ever consider actually classical music isn't that cool? Because for a kid, you want to be popular and all of that, and singing arias probably isn't the coolest thing. Or were you just happy being you?
Yeah, I was just happy being me at the time. I was so busy out of school hours doing anything musical, being in the local amateur operatic society show, or, training for this thing and that thing, that I didn't really ever focus a lot on pop music. I was aware of it, but I wasn't the type to go to concerts and have posters all over my wall. I didn't really have time for that.
Can you remember the reaction from your teachers the first time you opened your mouth and that voice came out?
No. I feel like I've been doing it, forever. I was lucky that I got asked in sort of comprehensive school. I'd be always asked, will you get up and sing in assembly? And that can be quite hard because people of your age, you are vulnerable there to kind of be made fun of a little bit. But I have to say that they were really good. I mean, they used to joke around a bit, but lots of support. So I think that was really very lucky.
What I'm trying to say is, and you're very modest, and I don't blame you for being so, but you must have had an extraordinary reaction from people when they heard you sing, even in those days. And I know you're not going to admit it. It must have been a real thrill for your teachers to see a pupil with such a great gift.
I don't know. I get embarrassed.
All right, let's move on from that. And your friends at school, did you hang around with people who were musical, or were you just a normal kid?
Just a normal kid. My best friend, who's been my friend all the way through school, is now a doctor. Never interested in music, and there were, I was friends with other people in the church choir who were also at school, and we had that mutual interest in music. But I was kind of a bit different in that way. As you said, classical music's not the main thing to love when you're in comprehensive school. So they just appreciated that was my thing, as rugby was, other people's thing.
Okay, we're going to take another piece of music, then we'll come back and talk about what happened next and how you're sat here and you've got the big record deal and the #1 albums and the sellout tours and Darcy Boswell and all of that. Another track off the album that you enjoy singing?
Well, maybe the P.A. By Andrew Levitas. It's an emotional one for me because when my dad was alive, he always used to ask us to sing that at family parties, and my sister would play it on the piano. So when my father passed away, we decided we wanted to record it to be played at his funeral, because obviously we'd be too upset to do it live. So I sang it and my sister played it on the organ, and I hadn't been in this until I went into the studio. I hadn't sung it again. So this is Pie Jesu.
Isn't that beautiful? It's called Pie Jesu. It's a classic song that means so much to so many people, but it's, as you said earlier, it's such a special song for you. How do you cope with losing your father at such a young age? I mean, I'm still very lucky to have both my parents. You were clearly close, and obviously he'd been through so much of the groundwork with you to create the star that you are today. Do you feel that he's with you here today and through those performances, especially when it's a tough gig, getting you through it?
Definitely. There's no doubt in my mind. Things have happened, along the way where I know it's been a sign from him that he's here, but I often will talk to him before a big concert. Not every day, but on the ones that, are particularly hard and I need that extra bit of strength. And I just do. I feel he's with me because he was the one that so much wanted this for me. He understood my passion. He put in all that time of, running me around and making me feel like it was achievable if I put the hard work in, and believed in me. So he would love to see this now, and I'm sure he's somewhere watching and sharing it, but it would be nice to have him here.
And I think that's what loss teaches you when you're young, is that you wish you could let them experience what you're going through now and the joy and the showbiz of it and the fun you're having now, for him to see that and be here with you. It must be frustrating that you can't do that. Yeah,
it is. So many times. My dad used to love Shirley Bassey, and the amount of times, I've sung for Dame Shirley, or I've, gone to an event with her, and she's a brilliant laugh, and I think, oh, my dad would love this. But that's why I think I make such a fuss of my family now, because for me the best bit of all of this is getting to take them to things that they've always wanted to go to. And I took all the family to Parkinson when I did Parkinson, and my mum got to meet Tom Jones when I was singing with Tom Jones, and I thought she was going to pass out. And it's those bits that are, for me, are the most rewarding, because you just see how excited they are, and I think that's what gives me a sense of reality, and why I don't think I'm ever going to take this all for granted.
And you seem very grounded, you seem very normal, and you seem like a person that doesn't get wrapped up in the nonsense of this business. It would be very easy to be going out every night and getting to the cocaine and the bad stories and taking your top off. You don't do any of that, and it's so nice and refreshing, and I think that's the reason you've got the base of support you have today. Were you ever tempted to do the Nuts magazine or the Hello magazines and all of that business, and become part of that cool lot that just want to be in the paper for nothing?
No, you get asked to do things. I don't think I've been asked to do Nuts, but but I have been asked to be on the front of some of the other men's magazines in bikinis and things like that, and I don't see the need to want to do that. I did recently do a shoot for GQ magazine, and that was something I thought totally different, because GQ is a very classy magazine, and we had people from Vogue working on the shoot, but I still had to ask my mum. I actually asked my mum if it was okay, and then I had to show her the photos before they were printed in the magazine, and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, you would see more of you on the beach. That was my mum's reaction. So as long as mum's happy with it, then that's fine. But, I wouldn't want to upset her.
So that's the rule now then. As long as it's anything else you do in public, it's fine.
No, but I am very wary of my family and all of this. And, my family didn't ask to be famous by the association. And I keep trying my best to keep my private life to myself. I'll answer questions, and I think people respect that I have got a private life, but I'm never going to be one to splash it all over the magazines. You won't see me selling my wedding, I guarantee you. Things like that. Not that there is a wedding before. Can I just clarify that before I start a massive rumour? If there ever was to be a wedding.
If you could just give me a scintilla of hope with that, I tell you why, I could probably get 10.5 grand from the Sun newspaper for that exclusive.
No, there is no wedding. I'm just saying that I just think there's a line you have to tread, and you have to keep to it, and I want to keep it about my music, not about my personal life.
You see, and the other thing that you're quite lucky is that you've got an ability, and you don't actually have to rely on getting press for anything. Your work speaks for itself, so you don't actually have to get involved in that. It seems to me a lot of these people that do those kind of stories probably haven't got anything else to talk about, so it's quite lucky that you've got this new album, really, isn't it?
Maybe.
Talking of which, let's take another track of music, and then we'll come back and find out about what you've been doing in the last couple of years, because it's just an extraordinary life around the world. Meeting everybody and being showbiz. Back next with Katherine Jenkins. We're back with Katherine Jenkins on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield talking to one of my favourite people. The first time I heard your voice, I thought you were good. And then the first time I saw you, I thought you were amazing. And then when I saw you live, you just blew me away. Do you now feel confident in who you are to stand on a stage and just do what you do? Because there's nothing worse than seeing somebody, no matter how good they are, looking uncomfortable.
Yeah, I do. I think I feel at my most comfortable on stage, and it doesn't matter if I'm having, we all have days when we're stressed out and things like that. When I go on stage, I totally let go, because I know nothing can interrupt this, nothing can spoil this. This is my time with the audience, and I love that, especially in my shows, that I get that kind of in between songs. We have a bit of a banter and a laugh and tell us a few stories, and each show is different in that way. So yeah, that's actually my favourite bit of all of this, I think, is the live performance and that having that relationship with the audience.
2 questions. Firstly, can you explain to me the feeling when you have a 50, maybe 100 or even 200 piece orchestra behind you, and the roar of those notes, and you have to come in and that's all for you? How does that feel?
I get a little bit shy, actually. I know people won't believe that, but when I first walk onto the stage and people clap, I'm always a bit like, wow, well, these people come to see me. It's lovely, but I'm not that extrovert person that some performers are. So I always feel really, really touched. And the orchestra, the ones that have been touring with me from the beginning, the National Symphony Orchestra, I mean, they're amazing. So when you've been working with a group for 5 years or so, you know each other so well. It is beautiful, and I love that we are able to take a full orchestra out on the road, because I think that's the real way to enjoy classical music.
I don't think it would work with a backing track, would it really?
No. I mean, sometimes in situations we, as performers, get asked to sing in things where it's not possible to have an orchestra. So in that case, sometimes we do use backing tracks, but my preference is always to have the live musicians.
Does it matter who the orchestra is for you, or is an orchestra an orchestra?
Oh no, different orchestras have different sounds, and obviously there are different qualities of orchestra. And I've been very lucky that I've got to work with, some of the top orchestras, and yeah, I mean, when you have these, sometimes you can have 100-piece orchestra and it's 200-piece orchestra. It's amazing. You can be quite kind of overwhelmed by the emotion and the sound of it all. But I've got some amazing memories of performing. One of my favourites was with Maestro Valery Gergiev in Russia, because he is to me one of the best conductors in the world, and just to watch him work with the orchestra was sort of forget the singing. I could just sat there and watched him conduct.
And help me with the conductor, because I've always wanted to ask this question, but how much of it is theatre and circus, and how much are they actually doing that helps you and the orchestra? Because I see all these wonderful guys waving their arms, I can't follow any of it.
Oh God, we couldn't do it without them. No, you've got obviously keeping the orchestra together, and then for us, we've got to know when to come in if anything goes wrong. I mean, they're amazing. And now in my show, I even have one of these very clever things where you've got a camera on the conductor and a screen at the stage. Well, they have those in opera, so that we don't have to look back. We can see them conducting in front of us.
And let's talk about venues. You've been very lucky to work all around the world. Is there a place you look forward to going back to, or does it not matter? It's all about the audience and the orchestra. The
Royal Albert Hall is a definite favourite of mine. The Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, believe it or not, is probably one of my favourite venues, just because of the atmosphere and the emotion of singing on my home turf. But the Sydney Opera House was a very emotional one as well, because that was just one of my ambitions since I was little. So to get to sing there was huge for me.
So much can go wrong, and even with a live show, I'm always fascinated by the fact that you're just a voice that really can't be heard unless you're helped with a PA system and orchestra. How do you keep in perspective the fact that you've just got to cross your fingers and hope for the best, because actually you alone aren't enough to fill those stadiums? It's an odd feeling, isn't it?
It is an odd feeling, and I've had moments where technical things have happened. When I sang at the FA Cup final for the first time in Wembley, the mic went down and I was singing with Leslie Garrett, and when I went to sing my verse, nobody could hear me, and it was really, really, really frightening, and it's a shame, but technical things happen all the time. And especially with my concerts, I'm quite calm when it comes to technical things, because I know that whatever happens, we will sort it out. We'll have a good laugh about it, and it'll be one of those concerts that sticks in my head.
And the FA Cup thing, I hope you had the sound man fired. He deserves it.
Apparently they didn't turn the microphone on. What a basic mistake.
We'll be back next with Katherine Jenkins here on your favourite local radio station. That's Down to the River from the new album Sacred Arias by Katherine Jenkins, who joins us today for an exclusive hour-long programme. What is it like being you today when you walk through the streets, or you walk into a TV studio or a radio studio like this, and I know your name before you know mine?
It is very strange. I have to say that's something that nobody can teach you. You just got to get used to it. In actual fact, I was running recently in a very dark wood. Don't ask why, but we were training. And I had no makeup on. I had my hair tied back. I was in a tracksuit. It was quite dark, so you could hardly see my face. It was raining, so I did not look like me. And I whizzed past this guy who said to me, "Keep up the good work, Katherine." And I thought, how on earth do you know it's me? It amazes me. When I think I'm in disguise, it's clearly not a very good one. But everyone's really nice. I think I am lucky that people come up and they say really nice things, and they just want to chat, and I'm a chatterbox, so I don't mind at all. And
when you go to something like Parkinson, and he's been such a champion of your cause, that's a funny feeling, because we're meant to watch him on the TV, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice part of it, and that's always when my mum freaks out usually. My mum had a big moment when she came to Parkinson. She's been very calm the whole time, and she sort of takes it all in her stride. Good Welsh mum, doesn't get carried away. And I looked over in the middle of Parkinson, and she was sitting there with her mouth, like her jaw was on the floor. And she was just staring at me. And then I went up to her after and said, what was the matter? Did I say something wrong? And she said, "Well, when did all this happen? You were my daughter, and now you're like this international star, and you're on Parkinson." She started freaking out. So it took Parkinson for my mum to realise what's happened.
And how do you keep your nerve during those shows? Do you just take it all in your stride now? Have you a way of dealing with it?
I can get a little bit nervous when I'm doing something sort of slightly out of my comfort zone, and the Parkinson was a really big interview. For me, I remember going down the stairs and thinking, please don't fall, because it would be so embarrassing to tumble down the Parkinson stairs. But he's lovely, and I've met him before, so I think being aware, really, sometimes with the press things and media things, you've got to look at it and I guess just answer with what you're comfortable with. But as long as you're comfortable with the interview in the first place, I think that always makes you feel relaxed.
I spoke to Andrea Bocelli a couple of years ago, and he said he'd rather not talk to anybody. He'd like to just sing and make albums. That's it.
My favourite part is the singing and the live shows and then making the albums. But this is all part of it. And, you know, in order for people to know that you've got a new album out or you're going to be out on tour, you know, you have to reach people in this way. But as I said, I am a chatterbox, so I actually find this bit really easy.
All right, we're going to take a final piece of music and then we'll come back with our remaining moments and find out where you've been and what you've been doing in the last year. I'd love to have your air miles.
Loads of air miles.
You don't have to worry about being upgraded, do you? We're back with Katherine Jenkins here on your favourite local radio station with our remaining moments. This year has been such a fabulous year for you. You had the tour last year, then you came across Darcy Bussell and put a show together which just went gangbusters. It was originally meant to be doing village halls and town fetes, and then suddenly you're doing arenas. Everybody wanted to see it. It seemed to me like you were surprised that people would want to see you and Darcy performing.
Well, yes, on that scale. We did the first lot of shows in the December and did 17 and sort of moderately big venues, sort of 5,000, something like that.
So it wasn't village halls?
No, it wasn't village halls. And we loved that and we had so much fun. We did not ever imagine that then we'd get the offer to go and do it again in the May, but it would be this time 10,000 people a night. So we played the O2 Arena twice. I think we did 10 shows in total. And because what it's ballet and it's classical music, so it was like suddenly it was a pop event or something because we were filling arenas, so that's why we were shocked. But we loved doing the show and it was so much fun. Very, very hard because I had to learn to dance and Darcy had to learn to sing, but brilliant. And we made a DVD, so we've got that as a memento of all the fun.
And I saw a documentary you did, the making of this show. That thing about taking you out of your comfort zone, you seem to thrive on that in a way. You like to make life difficult for you because you could have just gone on and sang. You didn't need to dance, did you?
Yeah, I do work better under pressure. I like a bit of a challenge, and I think when you should always have new things that you want to achieve and be working for. It shouldn't always be easy. That said, I did really throw myself in the deep end, and there were moments when I thought, "What am I doing? This is way too hard." But it, in the end, turned out to be so much fun, and I'm grateful for that because I didn't think I was able to sing things like the Carmen aria or Maria Callas and be dancing and running up and down stairs at the same time and being flung around. So I learned a lot of lessons doing that.
How fit do you have to be generally to sing, and then add that to the dancing? Does that add an extra 50% to what you've got to do?
It's totally different. I started, when I knew the show was starting, I started running. I had to get a personal trainer. I had to start doing, weightlifting and all this crazy stuff to make myself strong enough to be able to do it. Because sometimes when I sing the Carmen, I'm in front of an orchestra, I'm exhausted and out of breath by the end of the song because it's such a fast and technically difficult song. So if you then have things where you are running and being lifted and all these other things, it makes it really, really hard. So yeah, it has made me take on a different level of fitness, which I'm enjoying.
How do you know where to go in? How do you see what you're singing, or is it just there? Because I'd probably come in about 4 notes lower.
Well, I read music, and so I know what I'm supposed to be singing by reading the music, but also we've generally practiced it a lot, so I know where to come in because I've probably missed a few.
But on the scale in your voice, if your voice is like this and your note's there, how do you know to get it there and not a bit there or a bit there? Because we don't want a flat Katherine Jenkins or a bit sharp, do we?
Well, usually there are notes in the orchestra that will help you. They're a little kind of, we're singing within the chord.
So you've got some sneaky things going on. Yeah,
so you're singing within the chord. So usually you'll know, okay, well, I'm going to get my note from the trumpet at that point. But I also have a bit of a photographic memory, so I tend to see the music.
Oh, you see, this genius is continuing. Help me with the touring side of it. I think it's a miserable life. I talk to a lot of comedians who go from venue to venue. It's a very lonely life. At least you've got an orchestra and at least you've got people around you. It's not as showbiz as it seems, is it, touring?
Oh, everyone thinks it's really glamorous, but it's not that glamorous. And lots of parts of my life I think people think are always glamorous, and it's not. Often, I get to sing at things and I arrive on stage, but I've had to walk through the kitchens and all the back route and the alleyways to get to the stage. It can be it can be quite funny. But I do have a team that travel with me on tour, and they are sort of like my family. Barry, who's my stage manager, is Welsh, so that's always good to have him on the road. And one of my best friends, Sophie, she is my wardrobe mistress and sort of fast changer. And so when you've got people that, you know, you love around you, it makes it so much easier. And the family come and visit me when I'm on tour.
You mentioned early Shirley Bassey, and I'd like to give you a round of applause because those frocks you wear on stage, they are remarkable. What a feat of engineering they are. Congratulations.
Thank you. I love my frocks. I think that's just one of the best bits, is that I get to choose all these, because I am a girl's girl. So I love anything glamorous, and the shoes and the jewellery, and it gives us girls something to talk about when I get off stage.
I suspect you could buy a small house with some of those frocks. You're not getting them off the rack, are you? Let's face it.
They are being made, usually, yeah, because they need to be something that extra bit special.
Congratulations on being you. I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
Will you marry me? I think I'm in love.
Are you single?
Yes, desperate as well, and deeply unattractive. Nothing gets past you.
No, you're not.
Thank you very much. Seriously, I think you're incredible. The first time I heard your CD, I thought, I need to find out more, and it's just a God-given gift.
Oh.
And the fact that you don't do those topless shoots and things like that, well done for you, because I'd take the money if it was me. I'd do anything for money. Katherine Jenkins, new CD is in your stores now. It's called Sacred Arias, and you're a star. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant.